بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So real quick, two announcements, or one announcement. Number one, last week, for anyone who was here, we spoke about Hajj, and it was part of the Hadith, but some of the brothers, they mentioned to me that I accidentally said, or I misspoke, and I said that Hajj is fard once a year. So that's not what I meant. I apologize about that. I meant once in a lifetime. So the story I was giving was of a Sahabi who was asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is it fard to do Hajj every year? So he was asking the question, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not responding, and he asked 3 times, and every single time Rasulullah ignored him, right? And towards the end of the Hadith, Rasulullah says that I ignored you because if I made it fard on you every year, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? So it was out of rahmah, right? So that was the clarification I wanted to make. Hajj is fard once in a lifetime, not once in a year. So that's the clarification. Inshallah. As for today, inshallah, we'll go over hadith number 31, which is the next hadith, and we'll get right into it, inshallah. عن أبي عباس سهل بن سعد الساعدي رضي الله عنه قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس فقال ازهد في الدنيا يحبك الله وازهد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس. Now, the English translation is on the authority of Abu Abbas Sahal bin Sa'd al-Sa'idi radiallahu anhu, that he said, a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, O Rasulullah, direct me to an act which if I do it, will cause Allah to love me and the people to love me. So he's looking for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love of the people together. And he wants to do it, and what is one act I can do that will give me the love of the people and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, renounce the world. This is a rough translation, we'll get into the definition. Renounce the world and Allah will love you. And renounce what the people possess and the people will love you. Now, the Arabic word used is the word Zuhd, right? Which I'm sure most of us are semi-familiar with, right? The word Zuhd, the idea of like staying away from dunya and keeping and focusing on the akhirah, right? But the definition I want to use to give it a very clear understanding, and we can really internalize it in our head. And again, a common thing that we have is that we don't want to just come and learn or gain knowledge, but we want to apply that knowledge, right? So a definition that we can take and apply to our lives, right? This definition is from Hasan al-Basri, and he says, أن تكون الدنيا في يدك لا في قلبك. So for the dunya to be in your hand, meaning in the grasp of your hand, but not in your heart. So what does that mean? It means that you look towards the dunya as something that it comes and it goes. It's something that you have right now temporarily. It's something that, of course, you strive for, and you have it and you look for it, but it's not in your heart. It's not something you love. It's not something that is worth sacrificing other more important things for. It's not something that you love so much that it blinds you from loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that you chase after so much that you turn away from your salah. You turn away from applying the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from following that in your life, right? You prioritize the deen, and you prioritize the akhirah. You prioritize where you're gonna be for sure. On that day, standing between Jannah and Jahannam, you prioritize that meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over school, over your job, over whatever other things that are in this dunya, right? And to really get into the idea of Zuhd, we have to look at the Sahaba, right? So the Sahaba, because sometimes people will take it to an extreme and say, oh, that means, I'm not going to get involved at all with dunya. Because all dunya is a fitna, all dunya is something that will push me away from my deen, and because of that, I'm not going to get involved at all. I'm not going to go to school, I'm not going to go to work, I'm not going to do anything. And there were actually some people during the time of Umar Khattab, who they were sitting in Ahl Sufa, and Umar al-Khattab also says, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" Because it was during working hours, a time when people would usually be out, again, seeking rizq, right? So he goes up to him and asks them, like, "What are you guys doing here?" And he says, "Oh, nahnu mutawakkilin. We are the ones who have tawakkul. We are the ones who have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He'll bring us the rizq, and we don't have to go towards it. We don't have to go work towards it. We don't have to go out into the market and trade and buy and work and stuff. We don't have to do that. The rizq will come to us because we have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll do dhikr, we'll stay here and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that idea, right? So look at the response of Umar radiallahu anhu. He responds, he says, "Bal antum mutawakkilun." So in Arabic, "Bal antum mutawakkilun," which means, no, you guys are the ones who are, the tawakkul is being put on you, in a sense, to explain, in the sense that you guys are the one who are like the burden, really. That the people have to come and give you money. People have to come give you sadaqah, because again, you're not working, so people would pay for them and give them, hey, okay, here's food, here's this, here's that. So you guys are mutawakkilin. You guys are the one who the people are burdened with. So it's not the other way around, that you're putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that Allah will give you rizq, etc. It's that you're not going towards that rizq, right? And we see even the biggest of the Sahaba, Abdurrahman bin Auf, was, in today's terminology, a billionaire, right? A billionaire was Sahaba. And this is one of the 10 guaranteed Jannah. So he's not someone who was like disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by getting involved with dunya and etc. No, he got involved with dunya very heavily, right? But again, he contributed to that where? He took that dunya in his hand, not in his heart. He didn't take that dunya and say, this is the most important thing for me, and without it, there's absolutely no purpose to life, and this is what I'm chasing, and this is my goal in life. This is where I want to be. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be someone who has a nice job. I want to drive the nicest car, etc. No, it was the opposite. He took that money and spent it in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a very important concept to understand. That the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim in this idea of zuhd, in the idea of rizq, is that a non-Muslim is constantly chasing, the purpose of their life is to get to a position where they have the most money, to get to a position where they are very well off, to get to a position where they've reached the echelon of society. That's what they're looking for. Versus a Muslim, he does seek rizq. He does go ahead and work and try to get a nice job and have that's completely fine. But the Muslim does this as number one, as ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do this in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You take that money that you get and you spend it in sadaqah. You give it in zakat, etc. Right? But number two also, it's not the priority in your eyes. It's not something that you look at and you say, this is my number one purpose in life. This is what I will shape my day or form my day around. That I need to be the most efficient in everything. The number one priority is school. The number one priority is work. And this doesn't say that, oh, school is not an important priority. It's very important. And it needs to be very important for us, right? But what's more important? Going to Jannah, right? Islam. Submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created you, right? So for example, if you were stuck in a situation where you had to either miss Jum'ah or go to class or miss class, right? You pick Jum'ah. Why? Because you understand that this is a fard on you, for the brothers. You understand this is a fard on you, right? That you have to pray Jum'ah, even if it means that you miss class and you might have to go and watch the recording and you have to put more effort, or exam, for example, you have to email the teacher and say, hey, I have to miss an exam. It's the priority for you is going to Jannah first. And next comes school, right? And this is something that I want to dive a little bit deeper into, the idea of rizq. And I want to explain 3 points, inshallah, on rizq, and then we can go ahead and end up. Number one, we have to have iman that rizq, provision comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one. He is the only one who causes, and notice the word causes, rizq to come to you. Rizq cannot come to you without the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let me give you an example to make it more tangible, the idea. Let's say, for example, let's take the example of a test, because we're all students, right? Let's say you study for an exam, and you spend the most you've ever studied. You spend 10 hours, 12 hours, you're studying for the exam really hard, and you show up to class every single day, and you put all the effort in everything. You've done everything you possibly can for this exam. And you show up the day of, and it turns out For example, turns out you studied maybe the wrong thing on accident. Or it turns out the teacher decided, you know what, this year I'll make the exam really hard. See what happens. Or you show up and you forget completely. You forget what you studied. That happens sometimes, right? So you put the effort in, you put all the effort possible in, but you didn't get the outcome, right? So what's important here to understand is that the cause of you getting a good grade on that exam is not you studying. It's not you going to class. It's not you sitting in the front row and listening to everything the teacher says and taking notes. That's something that you take as an action, but the cause is tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you the ability or giving you the success to get that good grade, right? And the reason why this idea is very important is because sometimes we think that, especially when you're working, right? Especially as an employee, you might think that me putting in these hours, this is the cause of me getting my provision. It is the cause of me getting my salary, and if I don't put in hours in, the money will not come to me, right? Both sides are not true. You could be, for example, sitting at home doing nothing. For example, like a child, right, who's at home, he's not going out and seeking rizq. He's not going out and seeking provision. He's not going out and working or putting in any specific effort to get a salary or to get money, yet he's still being paid for by his parents, right? So the rizq has come to him even though he hasn't put the effort in himself, right? And this idea, for us as Muslims, we might look at it and say, this is it's kind of simple, we understand this, etc. But this is the cause for a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad things, for the non-Muslims. A lot of bad, like for example, the idea of individualism. Where did that come from? The idea of capitalism, right? That, okay, me as a parent, I will cover your costs or whatever legally, because I have to, otherwise I wouldn't. Legally, until you're 18, as soon as you're 18, goodbye, you pay for your own stuff, nothing to do with you anymore. And if vice versa, the son, when his dad gets old, or the son, when his mom gets old, doesn't take care of the parents. Just send them to a nursing home, they can take care of them over there, and we know how those places are, how clean those places are, right? It's not somewhere you want your parents to be. But we send them over there, and a lot of times non-Muslims will do this, and the reason why is because they're like, because I have my own life, I have my own job, why do I have to spend my time going to take care of my parents? So that idea in itself comes from this idea that I have to be always seeking provision. The purpose of my life is to gather wealth. If I'm not gathering wealth, or if this thing that I'm doing is not benefiting me in some other way, then it's useless, right? So this idea is very important to understand. Number one, that we have Iman, and this is part of our Iman Aqidah, that rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the sole cause for rizq. We continue to seek the means, and we do the means, we put the effort, but at the end, the tawfiq, the success, the rizq will come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not from anywhere else. That's number one. Number two, rizq has to be something that we look at from the idea that we don't dive too deep into it, but not too far away from it. So what does that mean? Meaning, we don't go into rizq with the idea that I need to gather the most of it as much as possible. Again, you have the dunya in your hand, but it's not in your heart. You go and you seek the means, and you get a job, and you get a nice job, and get a good degree, and do the best you can in school. You have to, right? If you're here, you should do the best you can, and get the best degree you can, right? And try to get the best job you can, and make the most money. But it's not something that you sacrifice your principles for. So notice, it's not something that you sacrifice your principles, which are laid out by Islam, right? Okay, I have to pray my salah, I have to give my zakat, I have to give my sadaqah, right? So someone might think, for example, that me giving my zakat and giving sadaqah, this decreases my wealth, right? When really, it's the opposite. The hadith of Rasulullah says, مَا نَقْصَ مَالًا مِنْ صَدَقَةٍ أو كما قال Rasulullah, that there is no wealth that has ever been decreased. No one's wealth has ever decreased from sadaqah. It doesn't happen, right? And you might think that, I'm giving money away, and I'm physically taking money that I have, and I'm giving it away, and now look at my account, and it's less now. So it had to have decreased. But when Islam comes and changes the thinking, and gives you a framework of looking at, this is actually an investment. When you invest into a business, and you put money into a business, you might spend, let's say, 1,000 or whatever number, you can put a number on it, and you're spending that money as an investment to your business. You say, I'm not actually losing money here, because in the future, I'll get that money back. In the future, that money I spent on my business It's all going to come back to me, and I'm going to benefit from it at the end of the day. It's the same idea with sadaqah and zakat, that you are doing something and you're investing in your akhirah. And this is a very important concept, that you don't go too far that now I have money, but I'm stingy with my money. I don't want to give it away fi sabilillah. I don't want to give it away for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have to keep it for myself. I want to hoard money. Right? But also on the other end, the Muslim can't be someone who is completely stays away from all of this and doesn't even attempt to seek rizq. Right? And this is something that is very important to understand. It is true, 100%. We all know this, that your provision, how much you're going to get your entire life, your risk is written for you before you're even born. You know this, right? It's all written for you, and you can't increase it with a penny, and you can't decrease it with a penny. So even if you want less money to come to you, you can. That's how much it's written for you, right? But the idea that some people have a misconception is that, okay, if it's going to come to me anyway, I don't need to do anything. Which I will give an example of those people who were sitting at Mustafa, and they were not going out and seeking that job, or going out in the market and trading, etc. You still have to put in the effort, right? So even if you want to be someone who's a zahid, even if you want to be someone who is a minimalist, right? You still seek provision, you still seek that money, but you spend it in causes that are good. Spend it in sadaqah, spend it in the masjid, spend it in zakat, spend it in ways that you can benefit your akhirah. And that doesn't mean you have to, because you have a lot of money, you have to go out and wear the nicest clothes. You have to go out and drive the nicest car. You have to now have the biggest house ever. It doesn't mean that. You can save that money and spend it somewhere else where you know it's beneficial to Islam and Muslims. Right? So that's number 2. And then number 3, I wanted to focus on the idea that, again, we seek provision also as an ibadah. Not we seek provision in terms of we want to benefit ourselves, of course, and that's something we need to be doing. We have to take care of ourselves. Our body is an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to take care of it, and our family, of course. But it doesn't mean that when I'm seeking this provision, it's purely this is materialistic, and all of this is completely separate from Islam, and this has nothing to do with Islam. Islam has everything to do with every part of your life. Every part of your life. It doesn't matter what you're doing, everything in Islam can be ibadah. And again, how? By making the niyyah, making the intention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to class for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to get money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because I want to take care of my kids, I want to take care of myself, which I'm commanded to do by Islam. Or I'm seeking provision and trying to get the nicest job because I want to make the most money possible to spend it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, you have to link everything with the intention that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from that lens, or from that perspective, a Muslim is always in a constant state of ibadah, always. Whether you're at work, whether you're at school, whether you're at home, whether you're in the masjid, you're all, in all those points, you're in a constant state of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for provision. And when you're doing that, it's an ibadah, it's something that inshallah will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that, inshallah we'll end. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وجزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.